All right. What is up? And welcome back to another episode of How to I can't even finish the intro.
What's going on?
What's going on? This guy gets so rattled so fast. He has to be the only one that opens the show.
He's the only one that can talk.
As you can tell, we have been out of pocket for a few weeks. We are back today, though. These guys traveled all over the world. This guy, I mean, you were in Europe for like 23 days.
Yeah, it was amazing.
He went to Europe twice in that 23 days.
You got a haircut and grew a mustache in those 2 weeks.
I was alone. I missed you guys.
He's got depressed and cut all his hair off.
Didn't know what to do. But we're back here and we're still doing deals. We're still shooting podcasts. We're still working. We actually just launched a deal. Actually, before we get to that, crap.
What time is it, Braden?
It's distribution time.
Our favorite time of the year. We get to do it 4 times. But we got deals. We got deals to show them.
Yeah, we got deals. So if you were on the investor list, which again, if you don't know how to do it, it's so easy. It's criterionfund.com. There's a big button in the top right corner that says join the investor list. And then you get these emails and you didn't get the massive FOMO that you did just now when you realized you missed it. But anyway, we just launched a deal. It is a grand Prairie learning experience. We're going to close on it August 15th. And it is a 100% pre-leased 10,000 square foot early childhood education center in Grand Prairie, Texas. Super easy. We're going to build it. We're going to sell it. We'll be in and out in 18 to 24 months.
Yep.
I'm super excited about that one. We're actually doing a series of probably 5 or 6 of those. I think this is the first one to go out. The second one will probably be in early October. Great return profile.
What do you think the average IRRs are on these deals coming up?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I'll get back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll excerpt that in over the video. So it's showing like over here, let's say.
Yeah.
But anyway, super exciting deal. I think it's like $1.2 million, $1.4 million equity raise. Like I said, we're closing August 15th. We're building it to sell it. We'll be in and out in 18 to 24 months. And it is the first one of like 5 or 6. And that is kind of a great segue into today's topic, because if you have noticed, there's been a massive shift in what we've been acquiring and talking about and kind of doing on the Criterion home front, and even Precision, man. You guys are building more now than ever, really.
Yeah, so, I mean, this market is providing challenges in our typical model of buying cash flowing real estate. Whether it was multifamily or multi-tenant retail, our MO has been to acquire these properties, raise the equity, and distribute day one cash at 11, 12% yearly right off the bat. But that's changed with the debt versus the cap rate spread that we're getting. You know, we used to get debt at 4%. We'd buy properties at 8.5 cap. And that spread allowed us to create that cash flow to give the investors. Those deals have become hard to find because the debt is now 7, 7.5. Could be 8, maybe the cheapest debt I've seen is about 6.75, 7. And so the cap rates, they may have moved a half a point. Debt's moved 3 points, 4 points. And so it's really hard to make those deals cash flow like we used to. And most of our investors don't want 3% cash on cash or 5% or whatever it would be.
Yeah. So I was going to touch on that. For all of the cap rate haters out there, let me just acknowledge you for 1 second. We know that there's more to the return profile than just a cap rate, right?
Yeah,
there's an IRR, there's a discount rate, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about simplicity, the day one NOI. What cap rate are you buying that property on the day one NOI, and what is the spread between your cost of debt? That's what we're talking about. We know there's more.
We know properties go up in value as you increase rents, but that's not guaranteed. That's a projection, and we don't typically rely on that to produce the returns. That's just an additive bonus of real estate. We'd love to have that day one cash flow. So what are we to do in order to provide returns for our investors that they want when we're not finding those cash flowing deals?
You got to pivot.
You got to pivot. And lucky for us, we've got contacts that are in the development game, and we're finding value in buying land, getting it pre-leased by national credit tenants, and then selling that and making a return.
Okay. But how does that does that work exactly? Because you're saying you buy land. What if you buy land and then you don't get those tenants? Are you actually under contract with the land and you have 90 days to close and then you get these tenants to sign an LOI? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, don't buy
you don't want to end up with
if you don't have any tenants.
Yeah, you don't want to just
unless you got cash sitting around.
That's called speculative, and that's called stupid. Like, let's just not buy land, right? Like, I bought 10 acres. I'm going to do something with it. It's like, it's probably not the best idea, and it's not even really our money.
So what's our business plan there?
Yeah, we go and get control of land, right? Get control of land.
Under contract, but not closed on it.
Correct. Yeah, we'll go put up earnest money. We'll conduct due diligence. We'll do feasibility, feasibility gathering tenants, making sure there's a group of tenants who can pay a market rate to offset the cost of construction to where we can make money. That's kind of what we're doing in our feasibility.
And this land that we're finding, we're trying to find it in good locations of growth, existing businesses around it.
So let's talk about your feasibility period. Your feasibility period is probably 90 to 120 days before you have to actually buy something, come out of pocket with
or go non-refundable with the money,
which is risky. And then you're out the earnest money. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get business done, and we're trying to get business done fast, right? We're trying to get it done in that 120 days. You're trying to get signed letters of intent, at least, ideally leases, probably not going to happen, with tenants that say, hey, if you were to build something here that fit, this description, and if you were to contribute this amount of dollars in TI, I would lease that for 10 years for this rate. That's what you're trying to go do.
And is it reasonable to expect that 100% of the size of the building that you want to build has LOIs on it, or what? Maybe 75 or 80% of it?
If you're doing a single tenant deal, obviously
it's one.
Yeah, it's
multi-tenant.
Pretty easy. Multi-tenant deal, you want it substantially complete. You want it to the point where the lender will lend on it, so they have a reasonable debt service coverage ratio servicing the debt.
You probably need to have 80% pre-leased.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the size, right? Yeah. If you can get to a 1.2 to a 1.3 debt service coverage ratio, I'd go in with, relative vacancy of no more than 20%, as long as it covered the debt.
Okay. And so then the idea is that once you get this built, you get these tenants to move in, then you want to sell it while there's still time left on the lease. Is that the end of the business plan? Is that the exit strategy?
Yeah, so it can be, and it is for us. A lot of people can choose to hold on to these assets. That's great. But it's essentially as easy as what we're doing in the retail shopping center game. If we're buying an 8 cap shopping center on the day one NOI and we're getting debt, which is the majority of the capital stack for 4%, it's a 4% spread. So our unleveraged return on cost is essentially our cap rate on our NOI. So if we can get an unleveraged return on cost of 7.5 to 8, and we have a market cap rate of that same income on an exit in a couple years or whenever it is for 5.75 or 6.5, right? So now you've got 2 to 2.5 points there of spread, and you can make it work that way instead of the 4 points on that because of your time frame, right? You're doing it so fast.
But are we not worried? We've talked about on this show before about how existing assets, we're waiting because of the interest spread. We're waiting for sellers to raise cap rates. Are we not worried about these particular assets going up, the cap rates increasing? No.
Ask me why.
Why? Yes, of course I'm going to ask you why.
Two questions. First of all, the average exit price of a pad site development we're doing right now is like $2.5 million. A lot of them are less. Some of them are like 4.5. Most of them don't go over 5, right? So in that space, with this type of credit, with typical market pricing, that leads to a very specific buyer profile, a buyer profile of a typical 1031 exchange seller who's trying to place a lot of capital very fast and trusted real estate. So they'll go say, hey, Marcus and Millichap or hey, CBRE, buy me as many Chipotles in primary markets across the country as you can. I don't want to pay taxes. I just sold something. And a Chipotle.
I only have 60 days to identify or whatever it is.
Yep. And a Chipotle unleveraged, you can earn 6% on. So if they can avoid a massive tax bill and earn 6% on $50 million, I mean, you'd buy a lot of Chipotles too if you didn't have something better to do.
It's not just 6% because it's hopefully going to increase in value over time as the rent increases.
Yeah, the rent increases every year on that Chipotle. And
but you're getting a 10, 15 year lease, triple net. So it's just, they're not going to have to think about their investment. And so these are people that just want to, they've sold, they don't want to pay the tax. They just want to get their money invested. So they're not going to borrow money on these. That's why, or they're going to get very low leverage, 30, 40, 50%. And so they're not as worried about the cap rate because the debt doesn't affect the returns that much if you're not putting debt on or very little debt.
If you were on our investor list, again, if you were on, man, so much information is to be accessed through the investor list. If only you were on it. We sent out a monthly newsletter. And in this last monthly newsletter, we sit down with a guy who's been selling a lot of our single and multi-tenant net lease assets, and transaction volume is actually up right now. And because the relative purchase prices for these deals is low and they're being bought in cash from massive exits. So, I mean,
so let's give some people some details of what this looks like, because Braden used a lot of words that maybe people didn't quite follow. But let's just say we have a half-acre pad site and we can put a national tenant on there, national credit tenant like a Salad and Go or a Taco Casa or something. And so let's say that we know that those tenants that's going to sell at a 6 cap. Okay. So now we lock up the land for $18 a foot, let's say. And then we go to leasing brokers that are working with national tenants that are expanding into new areas. And we say, hey, we've got this great pad site that's in a growing market. Tell me if you have any interest. And they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, we got interest. Taco Casa has interest. Starbucks has interest. Salad and Go has interest. Okay, great. Let's negotiate the lease rate.
Let's pause there. How are we finding these sites, right? Like, where would you go to build a new quick service retail like a Chipotle or a Hawaiian Brothers or a brand new Dunkin' Donuts? Where would you go to begin finding the land to do one of those, right? Find one that's being built. Find one that's being built. Find a brand new Dunkin' Donuts. There's a piece of land next to it. Get it under contract.
Yeah.
Right?
Hot areas like, if you have a Chipotle that's going in, you can bet that other retailers are going to want to be there. Are there excess pad sites around there?
And that's exactly what happened in Owasso, right?
100%.
We locked up the piece of land on both sides of that Chipotle.
Yeah, we bought 2.5 acres and it led to another 2.5 acres that led to another 2 acres that's leading, and we're going to have 10 acres by it's all said and done. And then Princeton, we kind of like foreshadowed that, and we're just like, okay, let's just buy all 10 acres now and we'll launch them as we figure it out. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, Joel, and as you're going through this, one step that we haven't talked about is who's building the building.
Well,
do they build the building themselves? Chipotle says, okay, we've got a preferred vendor that builds all our buildings. We want them to build. Or
it could be either way. Some national tenants have a preferred builder, and so great. They're going to have their specs. They're going to have their builder, and we're getting ahead of where I was going. But then you're going to be able to price it. You can have, if they have a preferred GC that builds all of their stores, then they're going to be able to tell you, hey, our store costs $500,000 to build. Let's say it's a small Salad and Go. So that's what it costs. Great. So now let's go back to, we're negotiating the rent. And let's say that we can get a rent of $70,000 a year, right? Triple net. So that's my income. Okay. So then I can say, okay, $70,000 a year. And let's say that these tenants, they sell at a 6 cap. So it's real easy to decide what my sale price is. So I just divide that by a 6 cap. That's almost $1.2 million in a purchase price. Or a sale price. Okay. I have $1.2 million. Well, I know what I have the land. I know what I have the land under contract for. Yeah. Now I can take their specs. This is the store they want me to build, or their GC.
And it's Chipotle, so they have specs.
Yeah. I mean, Chipotle may be bigger than this example that I'm doing, but and we just say, okay, how much is the building plus how much is the land, and can I, what does that cost to complete? Because I know I'm going to sell it for 1.2. And so then if we say, okay, well, the land is 400,000 and let's say the building is 500,000, we're simplifying this, but we're in at 900,000. Then we say, okay, I'm going to sell it for 1.2. There's 300,000 in potential profit. Let's rock. Let's go. Yeah. And so 900,000, on the, what did I say? 70,000 in income. Yeah. That's high. It's like a 12 cap on, did I do that right?
Sounds right.
It made sense until we started using actual numbers. Yes.
Yeah. But in any event, what you're typically going to do is build to an 8.5 or a 9 and sell at a 6. Yeah. Once again, the same type of thing. We're just making a spread. So we're building for 900,000 or $1 million, and we're selling at 1.2, and we're pocketing the 200,000. That's a small example. Some of the deals we're doing are $3-4 million, but it's really that simple. And going back to what we always tell you guys is you're one contact away from learning a piece of information that changes your life. We weren't developing these deals. This wasn't an area that we knew, but getting involved with Woodmont and then hiring Andy down in Fort Worth and then hooking up with retail partners down in Fort Worth as well.
Attending ICSC, meeting people there.
Yeah. And so we're putting these connections together with people that are doing this. And then we start looking for land in our own market. And so it really is the same kind of math that we were doing with shopping centers before. It's just new development, ground up development, but the numbers are the same. The math is the same.
So why, when we're buying a shopping center, are we comparing our cap rate to the cost of the debt? But when we're doing a retail development, we're comparing the unleveraged return on cost, which is essentially the cap rate compared to the exit. Why do we not use the cost of debt? Like, why is debt more irrelevant in the single tenant or multi-tenant retail development space?
Because we're selling it 8 months after we get it.
And we're not borrowing it all immediately, right? Like, we're drawing on it slowly. There's interest carry that's funded into the loan, and we're not borrowing it that long, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about that real quick. So we get the land under contract, we get the lease, or at least the LOI, and we're negotiating the lease. We take that lease and the contract for the land to a lender, and we say, hey, what will you loan on this? And they're going to say, well, based on the cap rate that this retailer sells at, this project's going to be worth $4 million when it's done. I'll loan 75% of that, or $3 million.
Or a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, whichever is least.
Yeah. And so then we say, okay, we got a $3 million loan. And so you can use that loan to fund the purchase of the land and to fund the development of the building. You're going to pay your 25% or 30% along the way. And so that's how you get it done. And we're going to be out, maybe 20%, 25% cash up front, and it works.
Here's where I see people go wrong with this, and here's where I think we went wrong with this in the beginning, and it's a very reasonable mistake, and I think it's very applicable to even getting into commercial real estate, right? We try to make it approachable. We try to get like the midfield, or like that, like not really close, but could be something here. This could be interesting. Maybe I could make something work. Like, for this to work, it really needs to be an amazing spot. It really does.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of the nature of development. If you're trying to lock up a piece of land kind of in the middle of nowhere with nothing going on, I mean, don't be surprised if nobody's jumping on board super fast to say, hey, we're going to do this. Obviously, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We were working on a light kind of office warehouse development for a long time. We were able to pre-lease tens and tens of thousands of square feet of that. But at the end of the day, the project just kind of didn't make sense. And that wasn't in the middle of town. I mean, but it was a warehouse office development. It was a little bit different. If you're trying to go and build a brand new multi-tenant retail that leases for $30 or $40 per square foot, it better be amazing.
Yeah, and we're buying land at prices that really are tough for me to stomach, not having purchased land in the spot before. But when you pay that price, you better be getting a good location. But if you are in the right location and before you close on the loan, retailers are going to justify that purchase for you. Mm-hmm. Right? If Starbucks says, I want to be there, build me a building and I'll pay you $40 a foot in rent, triple net. Well, then they justified the purchase of that land. They justified the purchase price for you, right, in that little scenario before you've gone non-refundable. So that's what's been interesting about this game, is it used to be an unknown for me, maybe a little bit scary to be paying higher prices for land, but we're only getting control of the land and letting the retailers decide if it's a good deal or not. Right. And then only then do we close once we have the backing from a national retailer and a lease that is sellable.
You have to be really careful with this strategy as well, because you will very quickly be known as the group that ties up all the amazing real estate in your market and never closes on it if you never close on it. So we're always worrying about that reputation, right? Like, I don't want to go get a bunch of stuff in contract. I tell people actively I don't get stuff in contract and not close on it, right? So we have every intention of closing on the stuff we put in contract. Don't go out there and just tie up stuff and have no intention of closing on it, right? Like, work hard. at what you're doing, and don't just do it for no reason. And if you do, for some reason, have to cancel a contract, don't cancel with nothing, right? Like cancel with some sort of due diligence, some feasibility. Hey, here's an appraisal I got. I got the phase one for you. I got this survey. I got all these tenants. You know, at the end of the day, I couldn't make it work. I'm sorry. And that broker's going to know you tried. You know, you didn't just waste their time.
Yeah, I got 10 retailers that passed on your site because of these reasons. That's why I'm not closing, because you're asking a price, but the retailers aren't coming on board. It's not making sense. They're not willing to jump on board with it.
Right. Well, we have a lot more of those in the pipeline. And the investor base seems to really kind of like them. I know everyone is itching for another shopping center. We are too. We want to buy a big shopping center. And I would say in the past month or two, we've underwritten a dozen. I mean, models.
Cap rates are starting to move on shopping centers. I anticipate that in the next 6 months, we're going to find some opportunities for some cash flowing day one properties.
Yeah, we've got LOIs, so hopefully one sticks, and
but
make something happen.
If you guys are out there active in your market and you are driving by a brand new construction for a quality national tenant retailer and you see a pad next to it, inquire about it. Hit us up. Let's partner on that.
Talk to us about it.
Like you know. You guys are out in your markets, and we love partnering with you guys on deals. So let's do it.
All righty, guys. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode of How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate. Until next time.
Thanks.